And of course, I botched the roll. So now every time Zach walks in, I have to greet him with, "Coming at ya!"
Oh, man. You're listening to the Funkatronic Rex podcast, where a few self-proclaimed piratical nerds running a friendly local game store discuss the board, card, and tabletop gaming community they love and serve. We tend to be the goofy, gregarious, and non-grindy gaming geeks of the community. Welcome. Welcome back, folks. One more time, Funkatronic Rex Games and More podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you guys for listening to us. Another episode, another day in paradise. Thank you, guys. My name is Court. I run all of our events and organize play, and I have the greatest job in the world because I work at a geek store. Thank you so much for being here. Yes. To my left, of course, my main man.
My name is Michael.
What's up, Michael? What do you do?
I sell you things.
That's right, you do. Yeah.
Not much to it. Pretty simple, right?
Yeah, but you add so much value to the store.
Press the buttons on the computer screen.
And you give us the good looks,
and then
though.
Hey, it's ready to go. Oh, need a quick signature. Oh, sweet. Would you like a receipt? All right, boom.
What about the loyalty card?
Oh, yeah.
I got him.
Anything,
you got the snacks, too.
Yeah.
I feel like I
Snack
find
card,
myself constantly reminding people, oh, hey, by the way, do you have a loyalty card? And they're like, oh, yeah, I forgot. So there we go.
This is all going to change once AOS 4.0 comes out, and you're just like excited, psyched out of your mind.
I don't know about all that, but
All right.
We'll get there.
Well, speaking of psyched out of my mind, of course, we've got the man, the myth, the legend, Lord Vader.
Oh, I'm so satisfied with the reality we live in right now.
Just a quick backstory. I have to call Mike
that's a Red Bull.
Lord Vader because he nat 20'd me. So for the rest of the year, I'm now calling Mike Lord Vader. So
Red Bull number 2.
I'm going to screw up. Shut up. Please introduce yourself, Lord Vader.
There's the Dave Chappelle skit. Hot hand in a dice game. Clackety-clackety-clack. I'll be Ashy Larry for right now.
Oh, gosh.
I've been amazingly unlucky with some of these Nat 20 rolls.
We're going to get into the craziness of that. But so I'm going to slip up a lot, but I've got Lord Vader, a.k.a. Mike, in the house, of course, the Funk Father himself. And to his right, across from me, we've got a special guest tonight. Who's in the house? That's you.
That's me.
That's you.
That's you.
Oh. Hi, I'm Christian Greco.
What up? In the house. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Yeah, not a problem. Glad to be here. I'm actually really honored to be here.
Yeah, glad
I've been
to
listening
have
to
you
the
back,
podcast.
sir.
You guys are doing great, and I kind of have the idea what we're talking about tonight. Some of the topics, stuff like that. I'm really excited.
Yeah.
This is you couldn't have picked a better probably podcast to pull me for.
I Shanghaied you into this for sure.
This works for everybody because I am very unprepared.
That's where I come in. I've got notes and everything. So, Christian, thank you so much for being here. Please tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, how you've been associated with Funkatronic Rex, what you do. Or I was going to say, who is your daddy? What does he do? But tell us a little bit about your backstory and how we know you.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a cold night on October 15th, 1992. And I
was going to say, that's not here because October is still warm in Phoenix.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, all right.
I kind of grew up in the nerd scene. That was always my thing. Is my uncle? He painted minis. He did all types of Warhammer. He did Battlestar Galactica. He did all sorts of stuff. And just growing up, I always saw that. I loved seeing it. And it was one of those things that even at a young age, I started collecting Tomb Kings. And with the recent release of Old World, man, I was stoked.
Yeah.
But either way. Kind of fast forward a little bit. I'm originally from Pennsylvania. I moved here in 2018, and I hadn't really made any friends. Okay. At that time, I was kind of like, what do I do? So I started collecting 40K. I'm like, you know what? If I spend this much money on a game, I'm going to make some friends. I've got to make some friends. I can't just do this in the comfort of my bedroom. So I remember on just a random day, I had a bunch of old Magic cards. I'm like, I don't play Magic anymore. I came down I started Googling around, and I'm like, who can I trade these Magic cards in for some 40K?
Oh, okay.
And I met this gentleman to my left,
That's
Lord
me.
Vader.
Yeah.
And we did some trading. We did some wheeling, dealing. We made some lemonade. You know,
Sweet.
The old saying goes, we made some lemonade.
Made some lemonade. Win, win, win. I like it.
And just absolutely as charismatic as this man is, he's like, dude, what are you doing later? Like, you want to come down? Let's play a game.
Sweet.
So I started hanging out here. And I just started coming back, and it was really because of the energy. It's the energy that Mike gave. It was the energy the crowd gave. It's the same energy you give, Michael, you give, all of you guys. And then next thing you know, I'm like, you know what? I was working from home at the time. I think I was doing like tech support or something like that, just like chat support. I'm like, I really need to get out. Like, I need to get a job. Like, I need to get an actual job. And I started begging this man every day. Every day I would be in here, every Saturday. I'd be like, dude, you hiring? Have you looked at my application yet?
I got to tell you, it worked.
Yeah.
And not just like it worked with me, but as a huge segue,
Yeah.
well done. Because most people don't get it. As an employer, most people don't understand that I want somebody who's hungry, and I want somebody who's willing to, like, no, beat on my door. I need a job. I want a job, and I want to work here. A lot of people send in resumes or quick little like calls. Hey, are you hiring? Most small businesses will shirk that one off.
Yeah.
You have to show, like, I got to know your face before I even think about hiring you.
Yeah.
And like, I knew Christian. He kept showing his face. He wanted the job. Right place, right time. And more to the point, like, I think he created his opportunity. He found the opportunity for himself. And like, for real, man, I like that. You're hungry. I like that.
Thank you. I'm hungry in all types of ways. Especially, I just saw McDonald's got their $5 meal. Finally.
Inflation sucks.
Right. But they brought back the McChicken.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, the regular McChicken is not spicy anymore.
I didn't know it left because I haven't been to a McDonald's in years.
I know.
So
You're
you
better that way.
get weird like Carl's Jr. hot dogs, but you don't go to
Okay.
McDonald's.
Anyways, okay. I'm gonna make this real quick, but yes, fun little mini store lore. I showed these guys once. I'll show you, Christian. I made the mistake of buying a Carl's Jr. hot dog.
I've done it.
Yeah, this is real. In a break, I'm going to show you the picture, listeners. I'm going to post this as in our
Bad
show notes.
idea.
In our show notes, never order a hot dog from Carl's Jr. This is what happens. It is gross. Having said that, I was very hungry that day, and I had very little money.
the hunger.
So I ate it.
Yeah.
It was terrible. And now Michael continues to make fun of me. It was so bad. Anyway, so then you became a Funk employee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kept, digging at it, and absolutely. After he's like, you know what? Coming on Wednesday.
Nice.
I'm like, cool. I'll be there. And the first day, I think the first week, we kind of sat down and we just were painting some stuff, and it was everything I was hoping it would be.
Yeah.
It's past a job as much as, the saying of like, you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
Absolutely.
And that's what it was. That's exactly what it was. I got to come in and get paid to paint and teach people games. And I remember, like, it was weird for me. It was a very hard transition for me, especially coming from such corporate angles of like, all right, you got to clock in. While you're clocked in, you're doing this work. And Mike would be like, all right, this is the game you're learning today. Yeah. I'm like, I'm playing games?
Yeah.
Well, we sell games. Well, you got to know what you're
Or
selling.
like there would be some of the nights, like the draft nights. It's like, all right, we need an eighth, like, or
Yeah.
we need a round number. So
Jump
like
in.
you're jumping in.
This is weird hearing, like, I feel like I'm hearing my voice come out of your mouth. Like, I had the greatest job in the world. I got to teach people games. Like, this is rad
That's exactly
to
what
see
it was.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And it's something I'll carry for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I'll never forget about this place. Everybody sitting in front of me, everybody that I see, on the 4th of July party. It's going to be one of those feelings again, is when you walk in and it's like, it's cheers.
Yes.
Everybody knows your name.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's Mike, that's got to be the culture you wanted to cultivate here, right?
That was the goal.
And you did it.
That is the goal. Yeah.
You got
I
it.
do
It's
want to know
amazing.
everybody's name.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving forward with that, you've had a pretty cool job experience with Monument as well. So
Monument
tell us a little bit
Hobbies.
about that. Monument Hobbies.
Yeah, so I had transitioned from here to Monument Hobbies, and it wasn't obviously a personal thing or anything like that. It was just like I love to paint. That's where my niche is.
Yeah. And for those who aren't familiar, sorry to interrupt, but Monument Hobbies, pro acryl, the paint, worldwide known, amazing, but they're local here.
Yeah.
In Phoenix,
It's,
right? So paint company.
It's like 3rd Street in Phoenix or something like that. It's like right down the road.
Yeah.
Definitely recommend their paint, by the way. It's still, I no longer work there.
Oh, it's amazing.
I still use all of their paints, especially that satin black. Oh my goodness.
So good.
But yeah, I had kind of transitioned from, here to Monument. Met a lot of great people. I remember I was working here that day, matter of fact, and Jason came in to pick up the 3rd edition Dominion, the Dominion box. And I'm like, Jason, can I talk to you for a minute? You have no idea who I am, but can I talk to you for a minute? And I was kind of like, I felt like a fangirl a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to say he's famous, but like Monument, like you said, it's worldwide known. So I was a little starstruck. I'm like, hey man, you hiring? Like I want to get into the paint business.
Yeah.
Like this is something I'm passionate about, something I want to do. And we kind of went back and forth. I think he had lunch with Mike at some point too. And thank you again, Mike, for putting in a good recommendation.
I mean, that's what happens when you do good work.
Well, I appreciate that.
Boom.
But yeah, I mean, it was a great experience, and I think they've like tripled their employees by now. They've grown so fast.
Yeah.
And when I started working there, I think they had their base like 50 colors or something like that, and I think they've like doubled that by now.
Oh, it's exploded. Right. Yeah.
I need a new rack.
Yeah. And well, their artist series is rad, the signature series.
Oh
and stuff
yeah, I love that they're doing that, because I don't know if there's another paint brand that's really doing that. Is taking artist names and putting it like, let's work together. And that's what Monument does, is let's work together with an artist. What colors do you want to see from this brand?
Yeah. Or even brushes, too.
Yeah.
My first, legit, I have the Sam Lens set.
Amazing
that set is phenomenal.
Love it.
So
absolutely
good.
Love it. It's great for anywhere from doing like basing textures to doing like larger models with just basing colors, even right down to the detail with those smaller brushes that come with it. And you get a nice mix up of those synthetic and sables.
I was afraid it's funny, I bought it and I was afraid to use the set because they were so good. They were so high quality, and I was used to using like a lower brand.
Yeah.
I have to ask real quick.
Yeah.
Because I do know there's one company, Asmodee has a line of paint that they put out, the Duncan Rhodes paint.
Oh.
The too thin coats.
Yep, too thin coats.
We know that it exists. I haven't stocked it for a couple reasons. A, space. B, money. C, like, I mean, how many different... I think it's mostly just space.
Yeah.
Where
that
would
makes
we
sense.
put it?
Yeah.
You know? But I'm wondering, have you guys had any experience with it? Have you played with it at all? Do you know anybody painting with it?
I have
I
no
saw it
personal
at
experience.
Gamma. At Gamma, they were previewing it, and Duncan Rhodes was there. He was painting with it. It was received really well from what I was hearing.
Yeah. He's phenomenal.
He's phenomenal. I don't know who's carrying this. I don't know anybody's experience with it.
Yeah.
And we keep pointing people at Pro Acryl, and we can't reorder fast enough.
That's fair.
Like,
I have no experience with the new Duncan Rhodes paint. Like you said, Court, I've heard great things about it.
Yeah.
I own all of the Pro Acryl set. I own all of their paint. So now at this point, it's like, okay, what other things do I want to try?
Okay.
And I'm kind of actually really surprised to bring up that Army Painter just re-released their whole line as the Army Painter Fanatics paint. And they're advertising it as like 300% more pigmented. And like, they actually stepped up their game. I'm pretty surprised.
Okay.
So I've been working a lot with that. Working with a lot of inks, just, from your local craft store like Dale or Rowney.
Yeah. We were talking about that the other day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been doing using that for a lot of like OSL effects and stuff like that. But I'm very interested in the tooth and coats for sure.
Yeah, I just haven't seen any, but like I haven't had anybody walk in and be like, oh yeah, this is the new Duncan Rhodes. And I think it's just because we're not selling it, and the closest stores to us don't really do minis. Like you have to drive.
That's true.
You have to drive over 5 miles
to
find a store that does minis.
Also, in relativeness, Phoenix 5 miles is like what, 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on where those 5 miles are.
Yeah. So you've had quite the rad experience as far as
it's
hobby and work goes, and then let's get into just a little. I know we're still in your intro because you're such a rad dude. Like this intro is so important. Truthfully,
thank you.
Like, tell us now what you're doing with painting, because you've been doing commission work for a long time, and every now and then it's funny, we'll get trades in from armies of people that have commissioned you. And I'm like, that's Christian's work.
I'll see it in the case. I'll walk in and I'm like, I painted those. Yeah. And funny enough is like I just got those Necrons back.
Oh, they
Yeah,
And like I painted the Necrons. We made a trade for those. You got them. You sold them. They traded back in, and I'm like, you know what? I want them back. And funny enough is like I'm keeping it kind of exactly how they were, just as like this is where I was and this is where I'm at.
Nice.
Yeah, good.
And then kind of bring it back. You're asking like, what am I working on now, right?
Yeah.
So that's exactly what it is. I'm doing a lot of Necron work right now. You know, a lot of work with the Tin Boys there. I have Mike's Tau that I'll be working on soon. I have a lot of catalog going on. I'm even throwing Sisters in every now and again. Like I'm just trying to, you know, keep it fresh because, and something I would recommend to any hobby painter is that like mix it up a little bit. If you can, like you're going to get burnt out if you just sit there for like 2 weeks straight and paint the same army,
color scheme.
same color scheme, and it's like you're just batch painting, and it's like you're just a production line at that point.
Break it up.
Break it up, and then the other thing I can recommend is that like if you're just burnt out on painting, pick one mini that you can paint from start to finish in just one sitting.
Yeah.
But I have no like rhyme or reason to like this is what I'm really working on right now. It's mostly Necrons. But I mean, other than that, it's just kind of, I'll look at my case and be like, what do I feel like painting today?
Yeah. But if some of our listeners want to do some commission work with you, is that something that's
absolutely
available? Yeah.
I am the kind of person, I'm a businessman at the end of the day is like everything has the right price. Or,
Sure.
you know, everything is doable for the right price.
But you're available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at the moment, you might be put on a wait list, but
Yeah, I've got Tau. I forgot.
Oh, I mean, what Tau? No, okay. I would never do that.
But we'll put links to your contact info in the show notes. So guys, if you want, I mean, Christian, I've seen your work for years now, and it's phenomenal.
Thank you so much.
I had to a small little story. I had to finish up Joey's Night Haunt that
I
you
forgot about
set
those.
the standard for, and I was like, fuck, like here we go. But the way you painted them forced me to get better with airbrushing and dry brushing.
There you go.
Which both of those things I was not very good at, and the color scheme that you'd picked out and done for Joey was phenomenal.
I really love to hear that.
And so it was rad to kind of like have to pick up a little bit of the pieces like that you had set forth so beautifully.
You kind of put it into like you have a lot of tattoos. It's almost like cover up work.
Yeah,
it's like you're trying to either or not necessarily
it's
cover up.
It's additional because I didn't cover anything up, but I'd finished out the rest of the armor.
Yeah, I'm glad you learned something from it, and that's always what I try to do. I mean, when I worked here, we did those painting classes. And I wrote down like I spent a lot of time just like writing out almost like a syllabus of like step 1, step 2, thinning paints, like just definitions of things, and like this might be called this by somebody else, like you know how there's like a shade and a wash, or like layering and feathering, or like filtering, like you know that kind of stuff. So I really appreciate to hear that that kind of like passed along in some way, because I was burnt out on those night haunts. Yeah, and that is one thing I will warn anybody that hires me for commissions. I do work a full-time job. I do have a regular life. You know, I have kids. I work when I can.
Yeah.
So if I get burnt out on something, I'm not going to sit there and just string you along. But yeah, it'll be done next month, or it'll be done next week. I'll be honest with you. It's like, honestly, like this is just not something I can work on right now. I would be happy to give you back your models.
Yeah. Christian, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
But that's your intro.
Cool beans.
Boom. Check our Discord, Instagram, Facebook, our website, funkatronicrex.com. We also have a very fun Patreon. We have 2 tiers. One is $1 billion. Give us $1 billion. The store is yours. Everything in it. Even me. I will be your
like
pool
it.
boy, whatever it is.
Boy.
But we also have
minis, boy.
we also have the Funkatronic family tier, and we are starting to give exclusive content now because I've got my ass in gear. So the first thing we put out, and we're going to do this monthly, actually, I think, is the Funkatronic Rex. What? It's easy.
Oh, I just ran with the idea of pool boy, and next thing you know, I'm imagining Court as one of the Kens in the Barbie movie.
I'm honored.
And then he's the Ken that goes wrong and like makes it Ken's Mojo Dojo House, because I watch it all, guys. Daughters.
I haven't seen it yet,
It's
but
great.
I'll take your word for it.
It's great.
Okay.
I know what I'm watching tonight.
We We are going to do a monthly playlist called Funkatronic Rex Store Jams. We just put out Store Jams Volume 1, 16 songs on a Spotify playlist. Only our Patreon members are able to access this. It's a fun 16 songs that we've put together, 4 songs from each employee that we know and love. The fun part, though, is if you can submit a list of the name of the song and which employee added it to the playlist, you are going to win a very special prize. First person who can let me know the song title and the employee that put that on the playlist, and you will get a fun funk prize. This is for Patreon members only, so please join in. I'm going to be adding After Dark episodes or some possible little outtakes. Definitely outtakes.
I definitely have the next Nat 20.
I've got outtakes ready to go. I've talked to Ron. He is going to do a fun little Q&A with me about the
three eras.
The three eras.
The 3 ages.
Yes.
3 ages you told me.
Christian, do you know about this? Funkatronic Rex is in its 3rd age, as we're calling
As
it.
Ron has put it.
Ron has put it. We're calling the time period right now is the 3rd age of funk.
Yeah.
He put you as really kicking off the 2nd age.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of kind of funk lore here, and I'm going to throw that on our Patreon exclusive content. But Ron is going to get at us with his chronological kind of development of the Funkatronic Rex store lore.
Oh, he's probably got like pins and a corkboard with strings and stuff like that.
It was in a storage unit. I went by and he lifted it up and he was like, "Hey man, I got something to show you. Look at this." I was like, "Dude, this is fucking crazy." No, I'm just kidding. It was totally normal.
I can see it.
Yeah. So anyways, moving to hobby highlight. Michael, let's just start with you. We can get this over with. What's going on hobby-wise in your world?
So I can cheat because, like, by the time this airs, 4.0 will be out. So
Time travel.
time travel.
Time travel.
Oh wow, this is really good. New rules, Age of Sigmar. It's 4th edition. I get to play my Seraphon all the time. Wow,
There you
this is a
go.
lot of fun.
Have they leaked those rules yet?
No, so they did a faction focus.
That's what it was.
At the time of recording, it was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so we got a small snippet of rules, and it was like, oh, cool, this is sweet. But by the time this releases, yeah, the rules are.
So you're having fun already.
This is awesome.
Fingers crossed for Croak, man. Fingers crossed for Croak.
What do you think, they're going to kill him or something? Or double
Well, no,
kill him?
I feel like I feel like when you got him, when they released a new model, he was like really good, but they like nerfed him or something.
So he's in the deep iceberg of Age of Sigmar metas and armies and stuff like that. You know, the fun stuff, as the kids will say.
There you go.
He's had he's been all over the place.
Yeah.
And sadly, of all the things they could have spoiled with the faction focus, he was in fact not one of them. So I truthfully don't know what he's going to do.
Fingers crossed for you. He's your favorite model, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a rad
favorite
model.
looking model in the lore.
Yeah.
Favorite guy.
Hopefully he's righteous.
Even if he's not,
Righteous.
it would be doing the army a disservice not to run him because he is, he's so sweet.
I've associated with him with that army for years, since it was that metal model that was so hard to build back in the day.
Yeah.
So like I feel like he is synonymous with Seraphon.
Yeah, and I
He's gotta
think
be.
I think at this point now, when we transition to Age of Sigmar and with stuff not carrying over from the old world, he is one of the last standing like he has now become the face. Whereas back then you had all the other cool characters, all the demigod lizards who, half of them ride dinosaurs, which is cool. But now that they're all gone, they bit the dust, as Queen would say. They've made it.
Michael, I got to ask you a question.
Yes.
What would your name be as a now? Like in Nawat, what would your name be?
Yeah.
I think you might have said this before, but I'm still.
Yeah. So I think we've touched on this before. The where it gets me mixed up, instead of like making up funny sounding syllables, like, oh, I think this sounds cool. I've done research on how you'd get your name, and then this is exclusive to like the higher up people or whatnot. The
Okay,
kings
so
and
you're a
whatnot.
higher up. You are one of these Slan, not Star Masters, right? Is that what they're called?
Yeah,
Slan
the
priests?
Slan
Okay, so
Star
if
Masters.
you were one of these Slan Star Masters in lore, what would it be?
I'd hate to say it, but I haven't figured it out yet.
Oh,
And that's because, so when you get into like Nawalt naming conventions, and again, this was more exclusive to like the Royals, because what the normal class, oh yeah, that's Jimmo there. That wasn't their name, but they have
Jim the Seraphon.
they have simple names. So in Nawat, how some people get their name. It's not really like it's a name, but it's more of a like it describes what they are, who they are. Like, for example, you could have a king and like, oh, his name would be like, I don't know how to translate it into Nawad, but like you're describing the person. Oh, this guy is
dances with wolves.
Yeah, he is.
But lizards don't have hair. What? How do you describe you? Man. Lizards don't have the hair. How do you say the hair?
Yeah, because your hair is so important. Yeah.
Do they have that word?
They should.
Okay.
I haven't gotten there yet, all right? So I'm going to be honest. All the cool Nawal books Mike got me. I've opened them like twice, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to get to it.
Yeah.
He's on vacation mode, guys.
Yeah, I'm on vacation mode, right?
That's his second Masters. All right.
Yeah.
But yeah, their naming conventions is kind of like describing who the person is. So like, oh, he, guy's name would be like, oh, he who controls the storm, or he who cultivates the land, or he who
that's rad.
Yeah.
he who carries an eagle on his shoulder type stuff. So it's like, yeah, it's a name, but you're describing, you're describing, I don't know, the role, who they are. It's more of a description on who the person is.
Yeah. Okay.
I just got another Nat 20 roll.
Oh man,
Gosh, this is crazy.
I know.
Your crazy harebrained ideas are getting us into trouble here.
It's true.
Well, let's just switch over to you then, Lord Vader. So, what's your hobby highlight?
Oh, the Nat 20 game. It's been great. It's been great.
It's been good to him.
Okay, so once again, for listeners that don't know, if this is your first time listening to the Funkatronic Rex podcast, I kind of apologize. We're crazy at this point. I also, sorry, tangent. I want to say if you're hearing some background noise, it's because the AC is on. It's July in Phoenix. It's hot. We're not killing the AC for some background noise. But so on a Nat 20, we have a little fun game here. On a Nat 20, we take a nice old school sparkly D20. On a Nat 20, this happens. On a Nat 20, Lord Vader, you have to call me Han Solo for the rest of the year. Boom, hits a Nat 20, then it has to happen.
Yep.
But we've now since home ruled, house ruled,
We've
right?
changed the rules, and at this point, we're going to, at some point, we should print out an official document of like, these are the rules, and then
We all
there's a
sign
there's a
them.
little clause at the end, cannot be changed, like, these are the rules forever.
Them's the rules.
I'm with
Them's the
that.
rules.
Yeah.
And one thought that I had on those lines is there has to be an expiration date. So I think all rules, anything that might happen during the year gets reset on New Year's.
Oh, yeah.
So like
Yeah,
whatever, like you
Okay.
can't do something for perpetuity. No, it's like, and again, with the backfire rule.
But okay, Jared's locked into a Nickelback tattoo.
Oh, that
he
is.
has to get it by
man.
Look at this photograph.
31st. So what happens if you don't fulfill
See,
it?
I think what's going to end up happening with my propensity for the game is we're all going to rack up enough ridiculous things that we're going to start trading them away from each other.
Oh, man.
I'll trade you this one that you've got against me.
That's exciting.
Because I got to tell you, eventually, I'm going to get sick of having to do my saving Silverman botch roll.
Yes, we're gonna look. I've got these listed, so we're gonna. Get
you
into
have them
that.
all? Good,
hang on.
'cause
So just
great.
give me a little bit of your hobby highlight. We have this as a section for on a Nat 20.
I hadn't played on a Nat 20 for a minute. Like I hadn't really been playing. I would play like incidentally, like every 2 weeks I'll throw one, and then we made new rules and like I'm in. There's stakes now, and it can backfire. And I think the backfire is just as satisfying. And I backfired so hard.
But the backfire is if you Nat 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you
Fires
botch,
back at you.
if you botch that roll, like you figure out what the backfire would be. And
Gotcha.
I've been hit with some.
So if it was like, Michael, I want you to do red, white, and blue afro. But if I did Nat 1, I would have to get red, white, and blue
Which
afro.
happened. I have to do that. So
that's how that happened.
tried to hit him with
We've
it.
come full circle.
Yes,
I understand.
hit him with, you know what? Fuck it. We're in the segment
Let's
now.
go.
Fuck it. I'm sorry. We'll get back to hobby highlights. But fuck it. We're in it. So, yes, story time, Nat 20. Michael, on a Nat 20. This is my impression of myself, apparently. You have to come to the Frogtown Get Down with red, white, and blue hair. Ha ha ha. Because he's got a nice, beautiful fro. Nat 1. All right, so I have to come to the Frogtown Get Down with red, white, and blue hair. It's going to happen.
So I guess to like set it in stone, we have 3 rules.
Okay.
It is on a Nat 20.
Something
you know,
happens.
You say
You
on a
do the
Nat
thing.
20,
Yes.
boom. On a 20, you have to do what they said. On a Nat 1, you've botched the roll. So now it goes on to
Backfire.
You have to do that.
backfire
You
to
have
you.
to do it.
And
Yeah.
then 3, you cannot say the same. You cannot try to do the same Nat 20.
You can't do the
again.
same roll. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Okay.
Now, we do have little sub rules where it's like it has to be that dice.
Yeah.
When we do it in store, it has to land in the dice tray.
Which saved me a couple times because I had some bad, like they weren't botch rolls, but they're like, geez, I just can't get to stay in right now.
No.
I find that I always do better at the counter. Whenever
counter's
I move
the
it,
spot.
Whenever
Is
I
that the
move it
mojo?
to a
That's the
table,
mojo.
like if we were to bring it over here right now, I'd probably crit fail.
Nat 1.
Oh, I'd probably hit 3 1s in a row. But over there, the more ridiculous
It's the gravitational
thing
pull.
I get,
Yeah.
the better and I'm gonna jump right to it. We won't tell you what they are yet, but I'm telling you right now, I think I've got the Nat 20 of the year
Ooh.
and the crit fail of the year. All within the same week.
That might be a good segment for one of your later podcasts, like reviewing the Nat 20s from the previous
Well, Lord Vader, tell us about the awards.
oh man, yeah.
year. At award ceremony?
There's
I've forgotten. I got so many.
I
spinning
heard
plates right
something
now.
like that. We're gonna have the Nat 20 awards. So
You
like
heard.
at the end of the year, it was
Well, I mean, there's
like
gotta
who
be-
had the best Nat 20
Yeah.
and then who had the worst backfire.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Are we
That
gonna
sounds
get this
rad.
like, properly like
There's got to be a
recorded
prize.
and everything?
This is gonna be like the Dundies.
I was just going to say it. I was thinking it. I'm like, oh, man.
Ma-
Yeah.
This is like
we'll,
the Dundies.
we'll make a trophy. It won't
The
be
Nat
as
20s.
fancy.
Yeah, the Nat 20s.
But we'll get a trophy.
Yeah.
It'll be a D20, like on a pedestal.
it would be.
Okay.
There you go.
Good. Oh my gosh. This episode's so off the rails. I love it. It's so good.
It's my ADD.
so
I don't think it's yours.
So, okay, here's what I have for, because I have a Google Doc, and I've got so far on the ones that have not been fulfilled within the shop. So because I Nat 1'd, I have to come to the Frogtown Get Down, which will have already happened because of time travel. Red, white, and blue hair. Got to show up with red, white, and blue hair. However, I hit Lord Vader with a Nat 20,
Yeah.
where he has to show up dressed up as Uncle Sam
Uncle
at some
Sam.
point. Yes.
And then
Okay.
and then Alex doubled down on it that somehow I'm also dual wielding water guns.
That is the most American thing I've ever
see.
heard of.
Oh, was it you?
I hit the
Okay.
Nat 20.
I thought it was Alex, but you hit a Nat 20.
We
water
cooked
guns.
up. Oh man, we cooked up. It was perfect. It was perfect.
So what exactly was that Nat 20? Because I wasn't here for that one. I was just
So-
like, oh, okay, I guess I get water guns.
So it was just because I had come in on Thursday. So again, time travel. This is Thursday as of the recording of the episode.
Yeah.
But I'd come in and Alex was like, "Dude, man, I've been looking up like these really cool water guns, and I think I'm gonna get a super fancy battery operated.
Yeah, they're fucking battery powered. It's crazy.
I'm gonna come in. You know, we're gonna come in like locked and loaded. So then we started looking up at all the.
Locked and loaded.
So we spent a
Save
good
the
while-
children.
You know, yeah. Any chance we got, we were on Amazon, you know. Oh, cool. Oh, this is cool. This is cool. This is cool. And then we're like, all right, we've settled on like 2 big options. It's either like the AR looking one,
Oh my gosh.
or you got the cool, like, you know, handheld one, the
Yeah.
ones that Mike's going to roll up in. And then we're talking. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Mike has to come dressed up as Uncle Sam. So
Yeah.
we're like, we need to figure out how are we going to get a Nat 20? How are we going to get this? How are we going to get Mike involved with this? And so I guess this is kind of cheating because he wasn't here, but you know, this is where like
That's where the
small
other
sub
rules come
this
into
is-
play. But yeah.
It's like a by case thing, but
Slippery
so
slope.
Man.
boom, I was like, I got it. On a Nat 20, we have to buy Mike these water guns to add to his Uncle Sam costume, and then boom, hit it. Or like, oh sweet, this is
Nice.
awesome. So we get everything ready to go, and we're like, all right, we got to text Mike just to make sure it's gonna be good. And then Mike hits us with, oh, they're already in the shopping cart. So
In the shopping cart. Step ahead of you.
Yes.
Can we Nat 20 a bald eagle?
Oh my god.
I don't think bald eagles
There's no
can
way.
exist here outside of the
I
zoo.
don't think so.
No, we don't want to do that.
I
We need
mean,
a stuffed one.
we could
you
dress
can get him
court
a-
as a bald eagle.
no,
because
At the counter.
I'm imagining that Muppet.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Just talks really much.
yeah. Oh
like
my
him.
gosh.
We
Sam the Eagle. Sam the Eagle.
There you go.
Yeah.
we could probably get a bird trainer come in. Right, with his-
I don't think you can spray paint a parakeet, but
Jeez. So and then Lord Vader, you had 2. let's talk about the Zach one.
Talk about the costumes, or are we talking about botches right now? Botches. There's so many good ones.
There's so many.
Okay, so
we did the costumes one, I think.
The costumes, I hit everybody's Halloween costume, which is pretty good.
Which was like 3 out of 5 rolls in a row.
It was pretty solid.
That was amazing.
But then, what was the next one after that? Because that was, I think, do you have them sequentially?
Well, yeah, I've picked some out for this episode, but do you want to talk about the Saving Silverman one?
So Zach from next door. Zach is one of the servers next door.
Big shout out.
We've known him a couple years, and he comes in, and I'm on a Nat 20 frenzy. I say, on a Nat 20. Every time Zach walks in with food for somebody, he has to walk in Saving Silverman style with a proper "coming at you."
And Michael, do you know about this? Do you know?
I don't think you've seen this movie.
No, we're gonna watch it.
So here we go. I roll it, and of course I botched the roll. So now every time Zach walks in, I have to greet him with "coming at you."
Oh man,
he's got that down,
dude. One day on Tuesday, I'm already gonna be just like, "Oh my god, my throat,
dude."
And everybody's going to be over it. Somebody's going to roll me out of that one.
We're going to make it.
Somebody's going to roll me out of it.
Because I will roll you out if I don't have to call you Lord Vader.
Ooh. So the trading begins.
See, I'd rather scream coming out a little longer. The power.
All right, everybody, no more food delivery. You got to pick it up.
And then this one was on, I think, Tuesday. You want to talk about?
This is the Nat 20 of the year.
I think so.
I think this is my entry. I think I don't imagine I'm going to be able to beat this.
Okay.
But we're here. It's like beginning of the day. There's a ball game on, and I glance up at the ball game. It's middle of innings, and there's a commercial on. And then suddenly I look up, and there's a girl on the commercial that reminds me of somebody I have a crush on. And so I'm like, okay, here we go.
This is all out of the blue, by the way.
This is out of the
His
blue.
eyes are going wild.
I was just like, oh, I got this one.
He looks over
I imagine like Golem from like Lord of the Rings.
Dude,
yes.
Those eyes.
You have no idea how perfect this was. I'm cooking it on the spot, and I can feel the mojo. I'm like, okay, on a Nat 20, however it happens, Court has to make it happen. I got to get a high five, a handshake, some kind of intro between me and Aquafina. And I hit it!
Boom! It landed so good.
Out of the blue, bro. It came to me.
Kismet.
It was perfect. So, if you're out there, Court's going to connect us, Aquafina. Because
well, here's my official Aquafina. If you're listening, please message us, and we'll get the high five to Mike, or we'll do some sort of like little fan thing or something.
Dude, I could get a signed letter, and I'd be like, hell yeah, that's getting framed above the door.
You would have thought he won the lottery on that
it was
roll.
so funny.
He was like,
I just love the
energy.
ludicrous odds. I love it. Like every time I cook something silly,
yeah,
it's gonna hit.
It'll happen.
That was good.
It'll happen.
My gosh. Yeah. I have a lot of very interesting contacts in my phone because, much like Lord Vader here, I worked in LA. So randomly, like, I'll find, oh, there's Slash's phone number. Like, oh, I have, like, oh, Danny Elfman. We can give, oh, wait, maybe that'll be a funny segment. Like, I just go through, like, weird celebrity contacts in my phone and we give them a call on the podcast. Because I've been waiting to call Danny Elfman for years. I have his phone number. It's in my phone right now. And I've just chickened out every time. But maybe, folks,
even if I'm not on the podcast, I want to be here.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? Here it is. If we get 25 patrons on Patreon, I will do a random celebrity phone call on air and see if we get them to answer. And if not, we'll leave a Funkatronic Rex voicemail. So if we get 25, if we hit 50,
you gotta let them know that you rolled the natural 20. They have to do a thing.
Yeah. For every 25 we get or something, I will do a weird random celebrity phone call. We'll get Danny Elfman to maybe be on the show.
Oh, that'd be sick. That'd be so.
Anyways, oh my gosh, freaking out now. So I got to get Mike with Aquafina.
Aquafina first, then Danielle.
Then
man.
the priorities.
Yeah.
Priorities. Man, okay. What you got?
Okay, so for my botch of the year,
Let's hear it.
I don't know.
wonderful.
Jared walks in the store like 10 minutes before we
this is so
closed
good.
last night.
We can't. Can we keep this in the episode?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
I don't know
Hang on.
yet.
This is a Patreon exclusive.
Yeah.
If you want to
Like
hear
some
what
after dark bullshit,
if you want to
maybe,
hear
but
what
like-
Mike's botch Nat 20 of the year was, go to patreon.com/Funkatronic Rex and join the Funkatronic family. Here you go. Well, we're back then from that edit, because if you're a patron on Patreon, you've heard the insanity of Lord
Stupidity.
Vader's
I
fail.
think his
Oh my
stupidity is
gosh.
better.
Very much so. Anyway, well, Christian, we have you here for a reason. You're a guest of honor, and we're so thankful that you're here. We want to pick your brain on painting because you're the painting master.
Oh, whoa.
I pride myself on being a good painter. Lord Vader here is a pretty good painter.
I think everyone
you
here
need to
is a
get
great painter.
You are good at painting. You just don't paint often enough. Like
The
I
amount
would
of like
say,
time commitment.
You know,
I know.
I think
I'm
I
in
saw one of
vacation mode.
your giants. I think I saw one of them.
Oh yeah,
His
it's in the
giant
case.
is
Okay.
smaller.
Exactly.
It's just not
exactly.
done.
I remember the
Yes.
first time. I think the first time you picked up a brush was at my house
Yep.
during COVID.
oh wow,
I'm like, dude, paint this Hot Wheels car.
oh no way.
yeah. And that's
Yeah.
usually what I would do my painting classes with is like it has a lot of hard edges, a lot of flat panel. Like I feel like it's a great just like you don't want to go out and buy a $60 box of minis. Cool. Go out and buy a $1 Matchbox car, some apple barrel paints, and like some cheap brushes. Try it
Yeah.
out. If you like it, keep
Yeah.
going.
Well, I would say, again, tooting my own horn a little bit, beep, beep. Like, I'm a good painter. Michael's a good painter. Lord Vader's a good painter. Christian, you're a great painter.
I really appreciate
You are.
that.
I'm sorry. That's just fact. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
So I wanted to bring you on here because this is kind of our off the rails painting episode. When it comes to the hobby, of course, Age of Sigmar, Warhammer 40K, even D&D minis,
Yeah.
these require painting. Painting is a big part of this hobby.
Yeah.
Even to which some Magic cards and Pokemon cards, referencing a previous episode with Kelsey, she paints on.
I saw that on the
Lorcana
Discord.
cards
Yeah,
and
doing
Pokemon
altars
cards.
and stuff.
Yeah.
That's rad.
Amazing. Even some pieces from, like I have the Evil Dead board game, I'm painting those pieces.
Oh, that's cool.
So painting is such a big part of this hobby, but I
Yeah.
wanted to bring you on as somebody who's an amazing painter, who's worked in the industry, who's actively doing commission work. And I've got some possible paint questions here, and we're going to get some sage advice, tips and tricks from you as well.
Absolutely.
But let's break it down a little bit just to kind of go from basics. So what would you say? Somebody comes in the shop, pretend like you're working here again, right? It's the good old days. Someone
I'm gonna
comes
need
in.
your signature.
Yeah.
What else did you say before?
Would you like a receipt?
I would like to receive. Thank you.
So they're excited. They've got a box of Space Marines,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Then they go, now what? I've come back a week later. I've built these. What do I do? How do I paint them? And I know that's a broad question, but give me like a little bit of your guidance starting out.
So kind of what I was saying before about the Hot Wheels cars. Like if I was working and you were a customer, like I've never done this before, but I see this. I see YouTube videos. I see other people doing it, and that's exactly where I would start. Is just pick something that looks cool.
Yeah.
Because trying to figure out the rules, and I feel like Mike and I, we've had this conversation a million times. When you started playing, Michael, it was just pick something that looks cool to you.
Rule of cool always wins.
Rule of cool.
Yeah.
Always wins.
Don't try to be the person that's like, okay, what is this? Like, these ones look cool to me, but these ones play better. These ones do this. And the sad thing is, half the time you might actually figure out the army you bought that you think looks cool, you don't like the way it plays.
Yeah.
But that's part of it. And there's nothing to be ashamed of. Is you as a miniature painter being new to the hobby, you're going to end up with multiple armies anyways. Just accept it.
Yeah.
Everyone ends up with multiple, like, well, I want to try this. I want to try this.
Truth.
But that's absolutely where you start, is pick something that looks cool to you. And what I would do, especially for the Warhammer models, I think they did a really great job on it, is if you turn, look at the back of it, it'll say these colors, like all the
Are they
colors
still
you need.
doing that on the box though?
Are
I
they?
thought they had the Citadel app, so they don't actually.
I don't
list
think
them.
they do it on
Oh.
the box anymore. I'm gonna.
Well,
go
when I
grab
worked
one.
here, time travel.
I know.
Time travel.
So that's usually what I would recommend when I was working here. Is like, well, back of the box, think about how you want to paint them. Especially with Space Marines. I think it's a very I don't want to say entry level, because kind of like BattleTech. I think Mike and I were talking about BattleTech, that you can do as little to these things to put paint on them and they still look great, or you can take sit there with BattleTech Mini for like 40 hours. They both look amazing, in their own rights. So
Michael, what do you got? You got the box.
Ooh,
Yep. Yeah,
Silent King over here.
So the Silent King, ooh, shout out. Yeah, so they don't list the colors on the back. They just say like
link to the
citadelcolor.com
honestly, I think it depends, because they don't do it on the 40K stuff
But
anymore.
on Legion Imperialis,
I think in the Horse Heresy stuff, they still give you
all the
like,
Horse Heresy stuff.
the color guide and whatnot.
Interesting.
We'll just take it as all minis don't, because I know like the Reaper minis, a lot of D&D. So really, looking at like a blank canvas is you kind of have to pre-plan to yourself, like, okay, I want that cloak to be red. I want his hat to be a leather color. So instead of feeling that overwhelming, that's something I felt as a new painter, is like, I need to buy all the things now or I cannot do this. I ended up I spent all the money I had on miniatures, and then I got like cheap like apple barrel paints and no brand, just craft paints that are like thick and goopy and
from Hobby Lobby or Michael's or something.
They do the trick. I still have one of the first minis I painted it's sitting on my spice rack in my kitchen right now. But it's just something I could see it every day, and I recommend that to every painter as well. Always keep the first mini you painted. You're gonna feel compelled, like, oh man, the second mini I painted is so much better, I need to strip the first. No, you don't. Keep that first mini.
That's a question I actually have here, is that would you recommend to new hobbyists or even like experienced ones, like, would you recommend stripping a mini? When would you want to strip a mini?
Ooh.
And
that's definitely
again,
a great
folks
question.
that don't know what I'm talking about, I'm not talking about taking clothes off a mini. I'm talking about like taking paint off.
We're
when
on
would you
different
take
topics.
paint off? Like, at what point you're like, yes, I will strip this mini and I will repaint it?
So I think that's a fantastic question. And I think if it's something that you've painted and you've truly made a mistake, and when I say mistake, it's like, okay, this is a new army. Kind of going back a step to like, what do you recommend to new painters? You bought this new box of Space Marines. You painted 3 of them, but they're all the same color, but you painted them with different recipes. And by recipes, I mean, like, I took this step this time, but I used this color this time.
Right.
You painted them differently, and you found one that was like, this is the way I want it. Maybe strip those other ones to make them match. If you have the OCD, if you're really that crazy about it, it's like, I want the rest of this match, go ahead, strip them. Other than that, I can't find too many reasons to strip a mini other than, like, it's a second-hand model. Like, somebody else painted it, and it's like, I want this to match my stuff, or like an eBay rescue. I know a lot of painters do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, what if you find a pro-painted mini for really cheap?
Oh, boy.
Get it, and then strip it, and just paint it yourself. There you go.
Womp, womp.
Yeah.
Does it still qualify as pro-painted?
If it's painted by Christian, it's pro-painted.
I
There
agree.
you go.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, my girlfriend, Allie, she's a new painter. And she keeps painting different minis, kind of going back to what I was saying, is she's painting her sisters in different ways, using different methods, she's experimenting. And as a new painter, I highly encourage that, is find your method, find your way. And she's still kind of finding that. And she's like, well, I want to strip the rest of these. I want them all to match. I'm like, they match. They're all red capes. They still match essentially. Like, this one might have like a deeper shadow. This one might have a brighter red or a different highlight, but they're all red. They all read as red. Keep them how they are. Because then you can kind of look back on it like, oh, I remember I did this thing. And maybe you're not doing it on that army, but maybe you're starting a new army. Maybe you're playing, one of the Tyranid, one of the Tyranid hive fleets, and you want a really bright, punchy red. Well, I remember doing it on this sister, and I can kind of replicate that.
Okay. Being able to look back and see what
exactly.
you did.
Now, for me personally, I recommend that to other people, and I don't always take my own advice. I'm definitely a victim of that. I will strip models when it's like, no, these all need to match. I need all of these models to be and look the same in uniform, and I need them all to be the same.
Yeah.
If I can save anyone else from doing that, it's not entirely worth it. If you just got down like a primer coat and you put down a base color of, like, again, going back to Space Marine, I put down a whole base coat of blue, and then I did a dry brush, and you're like, I don't really like that blue. Just reprime it.
Yeah.
Save yourself some time. Reprime the model. Start over again. If it's really caked on, maybe try stripping it. But I try to stay away from stripping models, especially because of most, kind of breaking it down to a science, most primers are made with a polyurethane. And most standard, like I'll soak a model in 91% rubbing alcohol for like 24 hours straight, and you're not going to strip off that primer.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things like you're going to strip it back down to the original primer. There's still going to be paint on there. Just don't strip your minis.
Yeah. Okay. Plain and simple. Well, then branching
Unless
off
you
of
have
that-
to.
Unless you have to.
Yeah.
Branching off of that with priming, would you prime in black? Would you prime in white? Would you prime in color? Would you zenithal prime?
Ooh.
I'm gonna be your noob here and be like, hey, I just got these.
Ask
what
me all
should
the
I
questions.
do? Yeah.
Ask me all
So,
the questions.
hey, man, I've got this army. Should I prime it in black?
Well, what do you want to paint the army?
I don't know.
Okay, well, if you're painting them like Blood Angels or maybe Space Marines or Ultramarines, I mean, I always prime in black.
Okay.
I
Why?
personally prime in black because I rather work up from dark to light rather than light to dark. Priming in black, if you think about a Space Marine holding, his bolt gun,
Yeah.
if you don't paint this little area the blue it's supposed to be, it's going to look like a shadow because it's
Right,
black.
right.
You miss a spot on a white painted mini, you're
noticeable.
going to see it from like 3 tables away.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to laugh at you. I'm kidding. However, there's so many different aspects of like you really have to think about if you're painting a lot with like contrast paints, transparents, ink, stuff like that. Mike did fantastic with those.
I have never primed in black successfully because I'm the exact opposite of you.
Yeah.
I use contrast paints and I want to like put color on it and
Yes.
then make it darker if I need to.
And that's
Funny,
why I
I'm
would
kind of the
ask.
same way with certain armies.
That's why I would ask,
Yes.
what do you want this to look like? What do you want the finished
Yeah.
product to be? Because really it's, and something I had learned at Monument was that you really want to think about your undercoats.
Okay.
What are you building to? How, think about the steps to get there. Don't just think about the first step in front of you. Okay, I need to get primer on this model because I need to get paint on it. Well, what are you going to paint it?
Right.
So kind of think about those steps. I think as like when I was a newer painter, it's just the excitement, the pure excitement of like, oh my God, I just want to put these together and I want color on them and I want to go hit the tables and roll some dice. So I ended up stripping a lot of models, kind of going back to that. And that's why I kind of recommend, like, if you can help it, do not strip your models.
Okay.
But I think as far as a primer goes, you asked about zenithal. I used to do zenithal highlighting, and I think it will work very well if you're using transparency, contrast, stuff like that, because you're kind of, without really having to think about it, a zenithal highlight, you're spraying a bright color onto a dark color from above as if it were a light source.
Right.
So you're kind of presetting your values. And that's really what zenithal highlighting is. And there are people that won't pay any mind to any of those preset values, and they just kind of use it as like almost like a pre-sketch highlight of they're not using transparents, but where they see the white, they're going to put their bright red, and where they see the black, they're going to put their dark red. And then from there, you can kind of blend the two together.
So it's less about the end result and what it will do for your paints and layering, but it's more for you as a guide.
It could be.
Okay.
If you're using like opaque colors.
Yeah.
If you're using transparent colors, I know this, it's gone by so many different names now. Slap chop. And don't get me wrong, I've slap chopped plenty of armies.
Sure.
And it's a great way to get color onto a model. It looks fantastic. And it's just quick. And
Describe slap chop just for
'cause
folks
I've
that don't
never
know.
heard
Oh,
this
you've
term.
never heard this?
slap
Okay.
chop. So you remember that as seen on TV guy? Slap chop?
It was like
That was a
the
joke.
kitchen-
That was a joke, and it went over everybody's head. I'm stupid.
Dicer, right?
Yeah.
So the idea of slap chop is that you prime in a black, or kind of going back to the priming I was talking about, is I like to use punchier colors. So instead of you doing black, if you're doing reds, blues, even greens, maybe undercoat in purple, because purple is a fantastic undertone shadow color, especially for like orc flesh for
Yes.
green. Amazeballs. But either way. So
Some like above my skill level.
It works. It looks good.
Purple on
blues,
Yes.
reds,
Yes.
mahogany. Mahogany is another one of those like really great undercoat colors as a shadow. If you're doing zenithals and stuff like that.
So we're doing a bunch of we've done a lot of sidetrack. Can I do one
mean
quick,
burgundy, by the
one
way?
small sidetrack? I remember when watching videos on how to glaze and whatnot. I was actually watching Jason from Monument. He was painting, I think it was Lorgar, like the Primarch
Okay.
30K model. His pre-preparation when he went into glazing, it was because he was like, all right, we're gonna do it on his head as what we're gonna showcase. It was like legitimately the top of his head. All right, cool. We're gonna go bright green, and then in the jar area, we're gonna go dark red. Oh, at the very bottom, boom, purple. And then when he did the glazing on, it was just incredible how he was able to bring it all together, which is like legitimately watching him do it. It was like, wow, this is the simplest thing in the world. And then you like sit down and oh, well, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But it was the fact that it was kind of like that, kind of like pre-planning. It wasn't just straight black and white. It was like, no, here's a little bit of green because then when we do it, it's going to look a little sickly. And then a little bit of red down here. So when you do it, it's going to look a little like, I don't know, like
everything I've learned from Jason.
It was insane. All right, that was
everything I've learned to Jason to kind of add to that is he's a very literal painter. I learned how to do, I don't want to say it's a true metallic metal, but it's a different way to do metal, kind of going back to like using primers. Okay. As I'll use like darker browns and like maybe like a burnt orange and like yellow ochres as those like, you think about if you were to see a rusty car outside, what colors would you see?
Orange, brown.
Exactly. So he always tries everything I've learned from just like overhearing him paint, watching his streams while I was working there, stuff like that, is he paints in a very literal sense. And I used to see it, and I never really thought about it before I started working there, is I would see people that would do like a patina, like a turquoise, over like an iron. Mm-hmm. Iron doesn't do that.
No. Copper and bronze and brass will.
Yeah, those types of metals do. And I never really thought about it because, like, I was putting it on like nililac oxide.
Yeah.
I was putting on like silvers and stuff like that. And it is a fantastic paint, but he's a very literal painter, and that's why you'll see him throw in those greens on a flesh color. Like, before I worked there, I would probably like kind of giggle to myself, like, why is this guy using green on his flesh?
That was like, legitimately what I thought. Like, bro, there's no way. And then sure enough, you watch him do the very end of the transition. Like, no, this looks like a legitimate head that you'd find on someone.
Yeah.
And then like you can see towards the top of his nice shiny bald head. You can kind of get those tiny hints of like the green of like, again, it makes him look kind of sickly, but then towards like the jaw and whatnot where it's a little darker because I think he's like holding something.
Okay.
It was like, oh, cool.
He has
you
a
can
mace,
see.
right?
I think, I might be misremembering, but like, oh, cool. When you get to like the jaw area, it'll still register as like, no, that's skin tone jaw, but you can get the tiny hints of like the red it was incredible. It was legitimately, it was like magic. It went from
wild
here, and it was like there was no blending in between like those like layers. It was like, no, here the top of the head is green, straight to like burgundy, straight to like it might have been like a purple or something.
Send me this video. I'll link it in our show notes. Just for
again, it was literally magic how he was able to get this like the pre-planning of like and not using just straight black and white, but incorporating all the colors and whatnot.
If you want a more saturated color, instead of using blacks and whites, because blacks and whites will naturally desaturate your color.
Right.
Try to think and even test yourself. Use colors you wouldn't normally think of for highlighting, like using some flesh tones as a highlight color.
Whoops!
Ghost.
Invisible people from the future. Time travel.
But I mean, using more saturated colors to either set your pre-shadows, your pre-highlights, whatever it might be, you're going to end up with punchier, more vibrant colors.
Sure.
So I can go for hours about this.
Yeah,
I absolutely could, because sometimes you have to think about like, okay, well, ivory, might have a yellow in it, so if you mix it with a blue to get a brighter blue, it might end up turning green. So like it might not always work out. So just experiment.
Yeah,
use a tiny little bit of paint. I have a billion of those, like the cough medicine, the disposable cough medicine things.
Yeah.
I use those I have those little dropper pipettes. Just experiment. Have fun with it.
Would you say to someone new, again, playing the noob card here, like, hey, I've got, again, Space Marines.
Yeah.
I want to paint them blue, just like they are. Can I prime in blue and then just paint over that?
So it's something you can do. I'm going to say technically, yes, you can do.
Right.
It's not something I ever recommend because typically, and even the brands that are like, oh, our paint in a bottle matches our paint in a can for primers, they don't really match. There's always like this slight shade of difference.
Sure.
And if you made a mistake on like, oh, I'm painting, the Aquila on his chest and then the purity seals, and I kind of spilled some of that, whatever the tan was, onto the blue, and you have to go back and fix that. That blue that came out of the McCrag blue that came out of the bottle or the pot isn't going to necessarily match the primer you put on. So I always recommend, like, you can use a blue as your primer, and that works great. It really does. If you're not too worried about it, don't worry about it, because you're not really going to see it unless you look like super close to it.
Sure.
But if you want it to be, again, that OCD of like, this needs to be the most perfect thing I've ever done, then I would recommend putting a layer of that McCrag blue over the spray of the Macrack Blue.
Yeah. Okay.
A couple things this is going to do, and some people might be thinking like, well, why would I buy the Macrack Blue then? It sets the tone, because going from black to blue, you might have to do a few colors in between to get it to cover right.
Sure.
Or it's going to look very brush strokey. It might go on thick. Like, if you don't do it right, it's just going to take a while. So getting that Macrack Blue kind of like, it's going to save you time, because painting blue over blue is going to cover the first time.
Right. And that's one thing I kind of want to bring back, because Lord Vader and I are on the same tip where, so the Necrons I'm painting, so fellow Necron brother here, that's an off-white with, so the internal skeleton is like a bronze.
Ooh.
And then the exoskeleton part is black, but their shoulders and heads and stuff are like an ivory. It's an off-white, really,
Okay.
from Vallejo. It's off-white.
Ooh.
I still prime them white because I cannot cover well that off-white over black.
Okay.
It ends up being streaky. It's a little bit tough. It does require a lot more work, because like if I miss white, you see it. It's rough. But things like going from a light color, like say you're doing Imperial Fists,
Okay.
would you still recommend somebody to do darker color, or can they just go white, off-white, prime it yellow, do what you wish? Are you trying to shoot for the color that you're going to end up with? Does that make sense?
On your prime?
Yeah, on your prime.
I always shoot for, I guess the preface that I think about it in a triad of colors.
Okay.
So what is my midtone going to be? What is the color I want it to read? That is your midtone. What is the highlight of that color? What is the shadow of that color? So go either way with it. So again, I work from dark to light, so I'm going to want to prime. If I'm painting Imperial Fists, I'll probably go back to like a monument like black brown, or like a reddish dark brown, something that is a great shadow color for orange.
Yeah.
So I would probably prime there. And then if you wanted to go in with your Zenithal, go in with your Zenithal. And then they have the transparent paints. So if you wanted to go over that with yellow, filtering all of this together, and it's going to bring it all together. And then you just go in with some of your spot highlights of your bright yellow for your highlight, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So when I prime, I typically try to prime in, again, thinking of those few steps ahead. How do I want this to be? What is my midtone? What is my shadow? What is my highlight?
Yeah. I think that's a great point. That's kind of what I tell folks that are new, like, to painting, and try and figure out, like, what do you want this to look like? Now let's go outside there. What's your shadow? What's your midtone? What's your highlight? Exactly the three. I've never put it in the words of the triad. I love that. So I'm going to say,
for what it's worth, I actually stole that from Army Painter.
Okay.
Because that's how they sell their paints. I think P3 also does too.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think that's a great way to put it in, especially with contrast paint, the rise of contrast paint, how well it's done for the hobby. To be honest, it's such a great way to get models out on a table quickly and make it look good. Plague Bearer Flesh, I think, is one of the greatest. It's so good.
It
Skeleton
really
Horde.
Yeah.
I do white or off-white Skeleton Horde. Boom, it's bone. It's so good. When would I use that over doing layering, in your opinion? Like, again, I'm a noob here. Hey, why would I use contrast versus just going to layer things, or vice versa?
I think that contrasts are going to do all the things that layering does in a one coat kind of deal.
Yeah.
If you don't have the time, again, if you're a family man, you have kids, you have a family, you have obligations, you work a full-time job, contrast paint is great for you.
If you're not great at painting,
contrast paint is great for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Get models on the table fast and it looks good.
Exactly. That being said, I still use contrast paints all the time.
Yeah.
I recently traded in an entire Star Wars Legion army that I think I dry brushed. Like I did like a black primer or like a dark brown primer, dry brushed them with some kind of ivory, and then sprayed them with Skeleton Horde.
Yeah.
Like I literally just airbrushed Skeleton Horde all over these things. I'm like,
were these
cool,
the droids?
Yeah, the droids.
Yeah,
the droids.
they look good.
They looked good. They sold already.
Yeah, well,
okay, glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Love to hear that.
Yeah.
So I think something Mike and I actually talked about a lot when I first started working here is that contrast paints are just another tool in your toolbox.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can go as little, I don't want to say as little, I think that's a poor choice of words, but if you want to just paint your models with contrast paint, use a white primer, they do great.
Yeah.
They do exactly what they need to do. They do exactly what they're advertised to do. If you want to use them as, again, kind of going back to filtering, layering, I use them as filters a lot.
What does that mean?
So filtering is, if you think about it, you take a picture and you make it black and white.
Yeah.
That's putting a filter over it.
Sure.
As you're making a black and white filter. Now, if you were to put a yellow filter over it, everything is some kind of grayscale of a yellow, or not grayscale, is a yellow scale of a value.
Yeah.
Right. So if you were to, again, going back to zenithal highlighting, is you do a black primer and then a white zenithal. So you have all your highlights, preset. And then you put a transparent or a contrast paint over that. You just filtered that model, much like a photograph would be.
Okay.
So if you hear me refer to that, and there's so many different industry terms, filtering, layering, glazing, feathering.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them that do end up meaning the same thing at the end of the day. But when I see a model done like that, I would refer to that as filtering, because it's just like a photograph.
Sure.
You just filtered that picture, right?
Yeah. Cool. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if we take the paint out of it, then let's go focus on the model. Do you find there to be a difference between model types as for resin, plastic, 3D print, any of those? Do you find a quality difference when it comes to painting them?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
guys, if you guys chime in on this too. I'm asking him, but
I have not
please, by all
painted a
means.
3D model, period, without having at least one place on the model the striation lines.
Yeah.
The print lines.
The print lines will catch the paint at somewhere,
Especially
Yeah.
dry brushing.
and and it will show in a like like the nicest prints I've seen still have the print lines catching paint. And so, okay, either I have to gob on enough primer to make up for it, but then you've gobbed on enough primer that you've probably lost some detail.
sure.
I don't know.
And kind of going back to the original question, do you see a difference? At the core of it, even taking 3D printing out of it, I'm sure anybody that's had experience with it will say that painting a metal model, painting a fine cast resin model, and painting regular GW plastic model, all are very different experiences.
Yep.
Almost like a canvas of they're going to take the paint differently.
Yeah.
And I'm the weirdo that most people are like, oh man, I hate painting fine cast resin. I hate painting metal. I love painting them. And then maybe it's just the nostalgia. I can feel the weight of it in my hand. And it feels like when I was a kid holding a model and a paintbrush and, those crappy testers paints, the enamel paints, in my hands. And maybe it's a nostalgia thing for me. I feel personally, and this is not objectively, I feel personally that they take paint better. I have a more fun time painting those types of models. Now, adding 3D printing into the mix. 3D printing has come such a far way. Etsy is the real thing. It's all over the internet. People are, taking an existing model, modifying it to be their own, making bits, making all types of stuff now. Resin printing has come a ridiculously far way that you almost probably couldn't tell the difference if you printed the exact model of Games Workshop.
Until you dropped it.
Until you dropped it. That is
Explodes.
Yeah.
We should just start walking around the tables during a tournament. All right, drop test. So when you're painting resin, you're painting, FDM printer, especially with FDM, is great for terrain. It's if you have it already kind of has a texture to it. So if you're doing brick walls or a brick building, it kind of adds to that feeling of this feels like brick, this looks like brick. Now, if you're doing, detailed models, you might want to do a resin printer. I would never, ever in a million years touch paint on an FDM printer of something that's very detailed. I would never, ever want to do that. And I haven't done my own 3D printing in a few years now, so maybe they've come further than that. But there's definitely a difference in feel of painting FDM resin, fine cast, GW plastic, metal. There is a feelings difference when you're applying that paint.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain. I don't know how to put that into words.
Sure.
You can feel it.
I'm sure it's literally down to the science of the porousness,
The molecular level.
The porousness of whatever the different.
That would probably be the best way. Yeah.
Is it's going to take paint better because it's more porous, or it might take paint worse because it's more porous.
That would make sense.
Because it's just cool. I just keep putting paint into it and it's just seeping in.
I know one of the
I've
big
had it
reasons.
happen on 3D prints on FDM models.
Yeah.
I've had it happen on terrain where it's it looked good on that first coat, and now I'm looking at it, and no, I need to go back again. It looked good on that second coat, but now I need to go back again. It feels like it takes it too well almost.
Or vice versa. This is kind of my pitfall I found. I don't know if you guys have ever had this happen, priming too much.
Yes.
So I've primed too much to
It
where
almost
it's
goes oily.
too smooth.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it won't take the paint.
Won't take paint. It beads off.
Yep.
Really?
I've literally like
I don't think
that's
I've ever had that
polyurethane.
happen.
it was a up big time.
That's
I was
polyurethane.
doing it on a commission. I'm not going to say whose, but I was doing a very like, okay, the majority of this model is this color. We're going to do this metallic priming because that'll just be great. I did it. I went to throw the first coat of paint on there. Zip, it beat it up.
Yep. Almost like you would have it on a wet palette, right?
Yeah, it was like it was on a wet palette.
It's happened to me a few times. And again, that's going back
That's
to...
from over priming?
Yeah,
Because it's the surface is too smooth.
exactly. And that's typically, like, you'll see it a lot more in gloss paint.
Okay.
You'll see it in, satin paint if you over prime.
Yeah.
And it's exactly that. If you think about it, the science of it is, I know viewer or listeners, you can't really see this, but matte, satin, gloss.
Okay, so just to describe, you have like your hands are like, this is the church, this is the steeple. Like, outside, see the people. You got your fingers locked, and then do it again.
So if you have like an X,
Yep, your
right,
fingers
that's your
interlocks.
matte.
That's
So if you
matte.
think about how light shines off of that,
Yeah.
it is not going to reflect very well.
Okay.
And then you kind of go halfway in between, almost like
Flatten them out.
almost like you're flattening them out, but it has a little bit of that grit.
Yeah.
That's going to be your satin.
Okay.
So it somewhat reflects light.
Yeah.
Now, when you get the gloss, it's a completely smooth surface.
Yeah.
It's going to reflect light a lot. So when you over apply that primer that has the polyurethane, and that's something I actually really love about the Monument primer, is that it's easy to spray. Two, they didn't use the chemical of polyurethane. So it's a two-sided, double-edged sword there that they don't include it, but it also rubs off really bad. I don't know if you've ever used
Oh, the
Monument.
primer like comes off.
It's not
Really?
meant to spray and play.
You have to put another coat on top of
You
it.
have to put another coat, and then it dries rock hard.
I've never used their primer. I've used all of the, like not all, but I've used a bunch of their droppers. I've not used their primer just because I exclusively prime in GW spray cans.
Absolutely. And it's something that really depends on, like, again, thinking about the steps ahead.
Yeah.
Is, am I going to use a Vallejo primer on this because I know that I'm going to be just priming an army and playing with it in between? Or am I going to prime this and paint this after I'm done priming it? So I'm sorry, I'm getting like completely sidetracked here.
No, it's good.
So kind of talking about your point of your paint was just beating off.
Yeah.
It was definitely because it was over primed.
Yeah.
Something that kind of going back to the conversation of stripping paint is something I've done is when primer's just too thick onto a model, I'll soak it in rubbing alcohol and won't take all of it. But if you scrub it with a toothbrush, it'll kind of give it some tooth.
Because it's abrasion.
Some grit.
Yeah,
exactly.
okay. Yeah.
So your paint might adhere a little bit better, as well as it might help with some of that extra primer that ended up on that model. Because it's not going to strip everything off.
Yeah.
But it's definitely going to get like a layer, at least just sand. I don't want to say sanded down, but the same idea.
So then, this may be one of my last real questions here, but it's like, what are some things, pieces of advice that you wish you knew when you started? Like little pitfalls like that, like over priming. I didn't know that was a thing until I did it, and I had to look it up on Reddit.
So priming is definitely and I think I used to joke about it in the way of like priming is like the bread on a sandwich. It makes the sandwich.
Yeah.
Is you need a good bread to have a good sandwich.
Yeah.
So you spray too far away, you're going to get a texture almost like powdery.
Yeah.
And that's one of the first things I did. I mean, I've been painting minis on and off since I'm like, I don't know, like 10 years old, maybe even earlier. But something that when I got back into it just before I started working at Funk, I had bought I thought it was a high quality primer from Micheal's. Like, this is a really great craft store primer. Like, it was like a $30 baller primer.
Jeez.
And I primed everything. And I'm like, everything, I think you have some of those poxwalkers still.
Yeah.
And everything was powdery. Like, everything had a texture. And I'm like, why did this happen? Well, you got to think about, like, well, what kind of climate do you live in?
Yes.
We live in Arizona. I sprayed too far away.
Yeah.
So something that I can recommend is for new painters, try on the extra sprue that you have, or even on a cardboard box, try spraying that primer and see how it dries.
Yeah.
You're going to know if you're too close, because if you start getting spider webbing, like it's pushing, the air is literally pushing the paint away from it, that's spider webbing. You're too close. If you're spraying too far away and you start seeing it almost get like hairy,
Yeah.
it's too far away. So definitely start with priming. From there, for new painters, I definitely suggest like just getting a solid couple paints, like your basic colors, your primary colors. Learn how to mix early.
Okay.
That is one thing I wish I was a little bit more comfortable with, is like mixing, this color with this color to make this color. And it becomes a little bit of a chore in the end, but you learn so much, like, I don't want to say color theory, but you'll learn how to blend more complex colors later down the road.
Yeah.
It kind of starts building your idea of like, oh, I can mix this to this to, do a shadow color. Mm-hmm. Past that, take your time to clean your models. Meaning, when you clip them off the sprue, cut off the sprue points.
Exactly.
I know, especially with the larger models, and I think, Michael, you can attest to this, is like the repulsor executioners. Mm-hmm. If you don't clean those well, nothing fits together right. And you really have to take your time with that. Yeah. And it's a chore. It's a labor of love. You spent so much money on this thing, put the time into it, spend some time, make it look good, do your best.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most important things that I would like to recommend to new painters is paint how it makes you happy. Before working at Monument, I would always compare myself to another artist. I would always Jose Da Vinci is doing this, Angel Duraldez is doing that. I am a terrible painter. I'm a terrible painter because they are good. But that doesn't mean that you, or myself are bad. Is because the way that you paint that makes you happy is the best paint you can do.
There it is.
It's like any other art. It's like contrast. Yeah. But that's what makes you happy. And your paint looks great because of it. Because you're not like, oh man, I'm doing this thing that I hate just to make it look good.
I have discovered I really only like big metal plates, like those on knights.
Yeah.
And I don't like hard edges. I don't like anything Space Marine or Imperium for all the hard edges. I don't want to do all that dry brushing. I don't want to do the edge highlighting. I don't like that. I like the big, smooth panels of like a knight's shoulder pad, or I exclusively want to paint organic mass. I do not.
I've seen your Tyranids, yeah.
I just want organic stuff. Is so much easier to paint to me.
It is.
And contrast paints loves that stuff. Especially with Seraphon.
Mm-hmm. Dude,
Seraphon, anything with a lot of texture. Yeah. Tyranids, contrast paint loves that stuff.
Dude, kit bashing loves all those flesh colors. It's so gross.
Yeah. Lastly, and this is definitely a bias, but we're going to welcome it. Do you find brand to be important in color? Like I'm looking for a really nice green. Well, do you want to go with this brand because they have really good green or something?
So, for me,
how paint acts as well.
I'm definitely I don't even know how to word this. When it comes to brands, I usually am like a loyalist of like, no, I will only use this. And it was only in the last few years that I finally broke out of that habit of like, to no offense, Monument, I wish you had better reds. So I got reds from somewhere else.
Interesting.
And it's not to say that their red is bad. It's just not the red I'm looking for.
Right.
I want a really bright, vibrant, punchy, like super saturated red.
Yeah.
So I started using, again, Daler Rowney. I think it's their fluorescent red or their blood red ink.
Oh,
and it's the brightest, most vibrant red I've ever seen. That's exactly what I want. As far as brand goes, I feel like, again, just do what makes you happy.
Yeah.
Paint how it makes you happy.
Different tools in the box.
Agreed.
Exactly.
Agreed.
I love Monument's paints from like all their dropper paint. I swear by. I love all of them. I'll try new colors just because I know the paint's good. But I vastly prefer the Citadel contrast paints over Monument transparents.
Yes.
Monument transparents to me are the only one of their paints that specifically I feel like I need to dilute them.
Yes.
More than like
they're thicker. I feel like they're thicker.
They're too rich to me.
Yeah.
The contrast line of Citadel gives you more gradient layers. Like I can put 3 layers on this and see difference between each layer. Whereas the first coat of transparent for Monument for me is always like, no, that's too saturated right off the first brush stroke. It's like, ooh, that red went on a little bit thicker. So you have to water it down.
Yeah.
And because of that, I've got all of their transparents and I still use the contrast. That's
so
the one
for what it's worth, working at Monument, that is actually a big common feedback. It would be either about the primers rubbing off or that the transparents weren't transparent.
I think they are transparent. Just they're so rich.
They're they're super highly
people
pigmented.
are expecting them to be like the contrast paints, which is much more translucent, and they're much more pigmented and just
they're designed by their nature. They're supposed to be like that, and it's something that we talked about a lot at Monument was that they were intended to be 1 drop of your transparent and like 10 drops of water.
Okay.
That is how
wow.
pigmented they are. Now, again, seeing on both sides of the fence here is, as a new painter or a painter that is like, most people think that these transparents are contrast. They're not.
No.
They're not. And they never advertise them as that. I will not, say anything ill will of mine.
No
They've
knock
never,
on them. Again, just a different tool in
Exactly
the toolbox.
that.
And to me, I don't like mixing paint because I'm the guy
agree.
that doesn't write down paint recipes. And even if I do, that third drop was bigger the last time than it was this time. I can't ever get the mix exactly right. I'd prefer to just
That's
paint
why I don't
right
mix
out.
now.
I don't mix. I paint right out of the pot with contrast paints.
I agree.
I know my paint is always going to be the same color I want it to be.
Yes.
Or I'm painting right out of the dropper, like drop a couple on the palette from Monument, and I know it's always going to be the same red.
Yeah.
It's always going to be the same orange,
Exactly
whatever.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, like, use the brand that works for you.
Right.
There are definitely, like, I wish Monument had punchier reds because I love the consistency of their paint. I love the way it covers. I love the way it works for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the truth is, I'm using reds from other brands because they just don't offer that pigment.
Right? Yeah.
And that does kind of go back to, like, Monument uses a single pigment paint. So they might not be making the same red as somebody else because that somebody else is using 2-3 pigments to make that color of red.
Yeah.
Like I said, is going back a few years, is I had that brand loyalty. I would use nothing but, at the time it was Monument. It was like, I will use nothing but Monument. And then after, departing from Monument, it's like, you know what? I have no reason to be loyal to anybody except for myself. I want to use the paint. Like, let me try some of these other brands. And that's how I found out about, like, the Army Painter Fanatics. I am very pleasantly surprised with their Fanatic line now that they're maybe a little bit thicker than Pro Acryl, not by much. They flow very nicely, and they cover really well. Like, I think they're going to give Monument a run for their money. Vallejo, I've been using Vallejo white ink to work with, like, some OSL and stuff like that. It sprays really well. It covers really well. It's not super chalky like how like the Games Workshop White Scar.
Yeah.
It's a hard paint to use. And again, down to the molecular level of, like, well, white is made with titanium dioxide. It's a metal.
We're getting real smart here,
Yeah.
baby. Yeah.
Well, I just make it sound good. But that's why you see it
Yeah.
bold titanium white, because it's made with titanium.
And that is my favorite white.
It's the best white
It
in
is
the
my
market.
favorite white of all time. I've put that over black. And the reason why I don't use it on my Necrons is because I need off-white. But otherwise, that
don't blame you.
Pro Acryl bold titanium white, phenomenal.
Best white.
So good.
Best
I
white in the
just
game.
don't paint white.
Well, that's the secret to painting white, is you don't paint white.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, truthfully, no. Truthfully, like, you don't use, like, where can you go from bold titanium white?
You can't highlight it.
You can't highlight
It's
it
the brightest
because
color.
it's the brightest.
I mean, you know what I mean.
Well, yeah. So you go
Yeah.
off-white to highlight with
You only
actual
ever highlight
white.
with white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
So that is why
What?
dry brushing.
It's nice not to pretend to be the noob there and actually, like, but
Yeah.
no, I agree with, as far as brand goes, I use 4 different types. And I'm actually, to be honest, I am constantly switching to Monument.
That's the one I
finding
pick up the most.
Like, I started in 2020. I had COVID. I Amazon shipped a whole kit of Army Painter. And I just sat on my couch and painted.
That was
painted
great for
minis.
Warhammer.
It was amazing. But a lot of those started drying out over years. And I was like, look, Pro Acryl's right there. It's amazing. I know it. Like, let me color match. And I was able to. I was able to color match some of them. Some of them, I'm still sticking on Army Painter. And I'm still
That's what
at
you know.
Citadel. And I'm using Vallejo's Off-White. And it's a tool in my belt.
Yeah.
And I love them all.
My unpopular opinion is I actually don't really love the Monument Metallics.
Oh, really?
I have a very hard time with the Monument Metallics.
Wow.
Okay.
And I use a wet palette. And
They're my
it's,
favorite.
They're gold.
I feel like Jason has said it a number of times. It's like, well, I didn't design this paint to be used on a wet palette. He uses, I think, a tile or a glass palette. And I mean, it is what it is. But every time I put the metallic onto my palette, my wet palette, is one, it'll either separate.
Yep.
It'll separate really bad. So you can mitigate that by only put on the small amount that you need at a time and just keep adding more. The other problem I have is even with a wet palette, and it might be just because of the climate here, is it gets really gummy.
Huh.
It gets really gummy and
noticed
it's
that, Michael?
hard to use. And I don't know if it's something on their end. Maybe it's, I doubt it. I've seen the whole process. They thoroughly mix their paints. They sift it or sieve it, whatever you want to call it. they make sure that there's no like impurities in this paint. They handle
Arizona's
it very well.
for atmosphere as far as
Yeah.
painting. It is.
I find it very hard to use their metallics though.
Yeah.
And it's something that like I found myself going back to brand loyalty. Like I've tried Scale Color. They have a gel based medium. They're still acrylic, but they're a little bit gummier. So I didn't find myself loving their stuff. To be absolutely honest, I think most of the metallics I've been using, I've actually been in the Games Workshop, like Lead Belcher, Iron Warriors,
Lead Belcher.
Yeah.
That Lead Belcher.
That Lead Belcher's right.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were going to say something, Michael. I kind of cut you off.
Oh no!
there
So I was
earlier.
gonna say, so touching on the gummy of the metallics, I think that because like having used both, I have also noticed the same thing with the Citadel metallics, and specifically, I think it's just. I think it truthfully is like whatever our climate is just way too dry.
It probably
to, like,
is.
Yeah.
It probably is. And like my Necrons, I'm doing with the undercoating of all my rust colors, like I was talking about before, and then dry brushing dark silver. So I am still using it, but I'm not actually painting on my dark silver. I'm just dry brushing it, so it works great.
Yeah.
You know, and again, in this climate, it gets a little gummy. It almost helps.
Yeah.
But then I use Necron Compound as like my final dry brush highlight. So as far as brand loyalty goes, like use what works for you.
Yeah.
Because you both said that you like the Monument Metallics. Doesn't mean they're bad paints because I don't like them.
Yeah.
Use what works for you.
Yeah. There it is. I agree.
Yeah. Paint how it makes you happy.
You're like the Bob Ross of the table.
I'm trying, man. Well, I mean, kind of plug myself here.
Please.
I was trying to do like Twitch streaming. It came down to some hardware issues. It's just at the time I don't have the money for a decent camera, and I'm not getting the color quality off of Logitech C920, and I don't have the $1,000 to spend on a legitimate camera setup right now.
Okay, well then you and I need to talk because I have a nice Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K that
Yeah,
I
we
can
do
maybe
need to
let
talk.
you use.
We do need to talk.
So there you go.
I have a Sousaphone 3000 with your name on it. Okay?
But it's something that I even put up on the page, like, hey guys, I'm doing this for fun. I'm not doing this as a job. I'm not going to have a stream schedule right now. I'm going to stream when I want to.
Yeah.
I want to stream and paint when it makes me happy to do so. So if you check out, it's twitch.tv/belly of the brush.
Belly of the Brush.
Belly of the brush, this is a very multi-meaning thing.
Okay.
It's something that I actually kind of created when I worked at Funk, and that was the painting class that I taught, was this is the belly of the brush. And you think about it, is like we're in that nerd area of like, it's the belly of the beast.
Yeah.
You play D&D, you play any fantasy role playing, is you're in the belly of the beast. It's a common phrase that you might hear, as well as just looking at the brush, as that is referred to as the belly of the brush right before the ferrule, or I guess right after the ferrule.
I didn't know that.
That is it's the belly of the brush. But also a third meaning that goes to this is that in the past I've struggled with a lot of issues. I had a very hard uprising. I had or upbringing rather. I had a lot of troubles growing up. I was in a lot of trouble as a teenager, and I battled depression. I've gone through a lot of stuff, and I found that painting was the one thing that brought me back down to earth and pushed everything else away. And I always kind of thought about it as like, not to sound like cliche,
Sure.
but align your chi. It's your zen. However you want to think about that saying in your head, is that me sitting down to paint is coming back down to earth and just being able to have a good time in front of me with my hands and a paintbrush and some paints and a palette. That is my zen. So my belly of the brush is quite literally like Buddha belly, the literal belly of the brush, and then the belly of the beast. That's so multi-meaning for me, and it's a very emotional thing for me, is painting. So it's something that, like, you said thank me for being on the show today. Thank you for bringing me on.
You're welcome. Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you again.
That cool, refreshing drink.
Well, I'm truly blessed by your presence here. Thank you so much for being on,
Not a
Christian.
problem at all. Thank you.
Yeah, it's always great having you in the store. Whenever you walk in, there's a great vibe.
You become a celebrity. at
Yes,
this
for
point.
sure. Truthfully. No, you have.
That's wild to me.
Yeah.
That's wild to me.
Yeah. Guys, anything? I feel like he said it so well.
I had some Nat 20s cooked.
He's cooking them in his head. Well, Christian, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you again. Appreciate your time. This will not be the last time. We'll get you back on.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
For sure.
I need a part 2.
Yeah, part 2. Definitely.
Bring me back. And when you make that call to Danny Elfman, let me know.
Yeah, okay. Patreon folks, get at us and we'll make these calls happen. But Micheal, thank you so much. Any parting words of wisdom from you?
No, that was great.
Yeah. Lord Vader.
You're not like convincing me to stop rolling the dice.
I know. Goodness.
Thank you for listening. Thanks for supporting us, guys. We appreciate it.
We do, very much so. Thank you, guys. Funkatronicrex.com. You can call the shop, 602-531-0433. Please stop by if you've never been in before. We would love to meet you. Get at us on Discord, Instagram, Facebook, all the socials. Please check out Christian's painting. We're going to put links to get to him in our show notes. Check him out. And we really appreciate all of your listeners and Patreon members. And thank you, guys. We'll see you on the next one. Time travel.
Flippity flip.
Thank you for listening to the Funkatronic Rex podcast. You can find more of the funk at funkatronicrex.com, Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. If you'd like to support us and the shop, please join us on Patreon by becoming a patron of the funk. If you're in the Phoenix area, please swing by. Come check us out. We would love to meet you and get a game in. You can also reach us by sending an email to shop@funkatronicrex.com. Stay up, stay true, and don't forget, stay funky.